My name is Nikkita Holder, and I am a 100-meter hurdler. Well, in March of 2015, I was in training camp in St. Kitts in the Caribbean, and we tragically had a teammate pass away, a drowning incident. And up until that point, he was probably the closest person that I had lost. And so that was really hard. It was really hard to deal with, just everything surrounding it, being close to him, being away from home when it happened, and never really having to deal with death to that severity before. And then 3 months later, actually 3 months, in June of 2015, my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And then, you know, they always say bad things happen in threes. 2 weeks later, my divorce was finalized. So it kind of came at me all at once. First, to be honest, I was a little bit in denial. Being of West Indian descent, a lot of the times we don't acknowledge mental health. So I was really unaware that I was dealing with mental health. And then sometimes you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to in general, and then coming from a family with a West Indian background. So it was a little bit difficult. But I think what actually made me see was one day I was putting my son in the car, and I was just so flustered, and so like my mind just wasn't where it should have been. And I put him in the car seat, got in the car, and I started driving, and he was just screaming at me in the background. He was like, "Mom, Mom, Mom." And I was like, finally turned around and was like, "What?" And I realized that I hadn't actually buckled him in. And I kind of like pulled over and like just started bawling, because I was like, oh my gosh, like if I got into an accident, he for sure would have been gone. So that's kind of when I acknowledged that, okay, Kita, like something has to give, and you need to seek help for sure. Preparing yourself to make a change in life can be difficult, because sometimes you don't know where to go or who to turn to. But for me, I went to my best friend, and I was talking to her about how I was feeling. And, you know, she listened, and then she gave me some advice, and she was just like, you know what, just go see your doctor, let him know how you're feeling, and go from there. And I'm so glad that she did that for me. So my doctor and I have a great relationship. And so I went to him and I was like, listen, this is what's happening. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so from there, he was like, let's try therapy. Let's get you into therapy, because he didn't want to give me medication prescription right away. He was like, let's see if we can tackle this another way first. So I did therapy for about 6 months, every week. And it was helping, but it wasn't helping enough, we felt. So when I went back for the follow-up, we basically were like, let's go on some medication for a bit. I was really, really apprehensive, because one, I was like, who wants to go on medication? You know, the whole stigma behind it. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. But I'm really, really glad that I did. It definitely helped a lot. Education played a big role. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing for myself and taking care of myself. And my doctor he had said it was pretty evident that I wasn't making enough serotonin anymore, and I needed to bring that up, my chemical imbalances. So that was what the medication was for, to help my body remember how to make that feel-good, you know, chemical. Language is super important just in everyday life, how we talk to ourselves. Like, we don't necessarily realize that our unconscious mind is dictating most of how we go through life. And when it's a negative narrative, it's really hard to be outwardly positive and do positive things and get positive rewards. So for years now, I've been working on reframing my mind and how I think. And also as a mom, I don't want my kids to learn what I'm learning now at 36 years old. I want them to know it now, so that life is a little bit easier for them as they grow. So yeah, language is definitely really important. There's a lot of negativity out there, and you know, my dad always says, if you don't believe it, then how can you expect other people to believe it? And if you're not saying it to yourself, how do you expect other people to say it to you? So if we're doing the changing, if we're speaking positivity for ourselves, then that's, the change is a little bit easier. In the back of my mind, I know that I'm not alone and other people are feeling very similar, but people don't really talk about it. So if I'm talking about it, it'll give somebody else courage to talk about it. And then it'll give somebody else courage to talk about it. It kind of is like a ripple effect. So just being open, I think, is a really good way to overcome a lot of the stigma that's happening.